I have to confess that I am a little nervous, so please bear with me. I really like the definition that was presented earlier about spectrums, it being a broad array of things. It could be from colors, could be identities, groups, and people, and so on. So to get into it, this month's theme is spectrums. When people see me, they see a transgender person. I kind of feel like this is like the living embodiment of a form of a spectrum. So when people see me, sometimes they just see a trans person, and that's all they see. For some people, that's a bad thing. They don't want anything to do with trans people. They've been told that we are something else. For other people, it's a good thing. They're like, wow, look at that brave person going out into the world. But ultimately, it's my thing. And it's not my only thing. We all live in spectrums. Some of them that we are aware of, and some that we're beginning to get to know. Our lives begin at point A, and somewhere they end at point Z. And you have infinite possibilities between point A and point Z to be infinite things, belong to infinite groups. We start school in kindergarten, and some of us go all the way to graduate school. Some of us end early. When you go to a doctor, they ask you, what's your pain level? 1 to 10. 1 being really low, 10 being really high. We know that spectrums can be a fundamental part of some people's identities. Or it could have such a minor impact that we never really think about it. Since 2014, gender has really came into the forefront, and people have really started thinking about gender. I'm going to take a moment and teach people about how we learn about gender today. So would you mind bringing up the gender unicorn? So here we have the gender unicorn. The very first thing is a gender identity. This is how you feel on the inside. I liked how the gender unicorn, instead of having like male on one end and female on the other end, it actually gives you 2 choices. Actually, it gives you 3. Some people can really identify strongly with the gender identity of being a female or being male or being non-binary. As we go down, we run into gender expression. This is how you look on the outside. This is what you're attracted to wearing. Like, this is how you want the world to perceive you. We know some cisgender meaning the aligning with the identity you're assigned with at birth. We know that some cisgender females really don't like to look feminine. It doesn't make them less female or less of a woman. They just don't like that gender expression. We also know that there are some very masculine males that have a female gender expression. Some of you might be a little too young, but Dennis Rodman comes to mind when I think about it. He was a Chicago Bulls basketball player, full of tattoos, full of piercing, very masculine looking, but I believe he wore a wedding dress when he got married. Other people prefer looking androgynous, letting their expression tell their story. So we move on. Sex assigned at birth. This is what you're assigned when the doctor looks at you and says, this person's female, this person's male, this person might be intersexed. And I know right now that there are some people watching this are just finding out that not everyone's male and female, that there's actually a spectrum to sex that isn't just A or B. Physically attracted to. A lot of people get this mixed up when they think about gender. When they see a trans person, they often think that a trans person is like super gay. But who I'm attracted to, it has nothing to do with my gender identity. Plus, I have no idea how to even define super gay. I don't have laser vision or anything. But this is your sexual identity. We know that some people, their sexual identity is a huge part of their spectrum. They really want people to know their journey and how hard they had to fight in order to love who they wanted to love. This happens with straight couples, it happens with gay couples, and it happens with every couple in between. There are Jewish men who have fought really hard to marry Muslim women and vice versa and everything in between. There are men who fought to marry men and women who fought to marry other women, and non-binary people have fought to have their pronouns represented when they get married. Then it's who you're emotionally attracted to. This could be a lot of various things. This could be a part of your romantic relationship. This could also be the makeup of your friendships. If you think about your circle of friends, it's probably not 50-50 or 70-30. It's probably like a whole spectrum. You probably have people from all different backgrounds and identities and genders, but you probably have one more than the other. And you also look at who you've dated in the past. Same goes there. One thing, the gender unicorn was one of the very first things that was put out there for people to learn about gender. And it has a journey. It started in A, and it was probably about 2012 when it really came to fruition. But it's getting a lot of flack because, well, some people say that unicorns don't exist. I'd have to argue that the national animal of Scotland would argue, because the national animal of Scotland happens to be a unicorn. So we are seeing the gender unicorn get to its end of its journey, and we're going to probably see something new. And I'm excited about that, and I'm not sure what that will be. All right, so I think we had enough of the gender unicorn. So growing up, I was led to believe that certain behaviors were masculine and others were feminine. And I wasn't ready for the world to see me as me. As you can see, my gender expression is very feminine. My voice might sound a little masculine, but that happens. So because when I was younger, because I wasn't ready for the world to see me, my gender expression back then was also a full-blown 10, very strong. I wore a mask, like everyone's doing in 2020. But the mask that I wore was cisgender male. I didn't want people to see who I was. I was scared that they would see my gender identity and think of me as bad. I couldn't believe that somebody out there could see all the areas of gray in between who I was and who I wanted to be. I remember hiding my gender identity and also using my creativity to hide it. Before the show started, we had a long conversation about ducks. In order to make dresses without being caught, I made duck blinds. And so I had all these panels out, and I was justifying these panels to be duck blinds. And I used certain colors that were dark in tone because then, people wouldn't see that this could be a dress. And I remember, and this was all hand sewn too, by the way, because God forbid if I requested a sewing machine, I would be outed. So I remember making my first dress. I had all the panels put together, all A to Z, ready to go. I started putting it all together. It was very similar to what I'm wearing today, except black, all black. And I remember I was about to put on the last panel, and I heard the click to my room, and someone was about to enter. And using all of my strength and all of my fear and all of my shame, I destroyed that dress in a second. It was gone, ceased to ever exist ever again. If I would have accepted that there's more to life than good and bad, male, female, there's all these things in between, I could have maybe enjoyed my creation for more than 2 seconds. I could have dealt with the confrontation of why are you making that? I could have like said, well, it makes me feel good. It makes me feel like it makes me feel so happy that I feel like I'm a number 10 on the happiness scale. But instead, I looked at the world black and white, and I did not want to be judged. When we talk about spectrums, it's also important that we talk about the times when using the spectrum makes us uncomfortable. I remember the counselor that I was working with long time ago trying to get my black and white thinking to change to something a little bit more spectrum-based, a little bit more rainbow in hue. I remember feeling that I was broken and that I was wrong. I was feminine. I remember somebody challenging me simply by using a Likert scale. A Likert scale is something where we say like a 1 very weak, 10 very strong. And this person took a list of really strong women and had me use Likert scales. And that changed the way that I was thinking about things. It also took, so all of a sudden I had a newfound respect for all these different women. The other thing that happened is that they took some of the people who I considered role models, just because they were the authorities, we did the same thing, and I found that I put women higher on my Likert scale, women leaders higher on my Likert scale. And then all of a sudden I realized that the authority that told me that men are good, they never said women were bad, but they always said men are good, was really impacting me in a really negative way. There are still some aspects about my identity and about my background that sometimes make me feel uncomfortable, and sometimes I can tell they make other people feel uncomfortable. Like, growing up to hide who I was, I had to learn a lot about farming, a lot about engines, a lot about dirt, a lot about ducks. I still like talking about those things. I'd maybe put those things like on a level 6, sometimes even an 8, like depending on my mood. However, I can now recognize 10s. I now recognize moments where I absolutely feel that I have accomplished what I've needed to accomplish. And the last time that I felt a 10 is when I wore a dress that I customized to a gala, and that gala happened to be one that I also put together. So something that the old me would probably have said, oh, that's absolutely horrible. I felt like I was home the whole time when I was at that event. When we reflect on ourselves and our projects, we can often hear our inner selves saying, like, this isn't right. You need to fix this thing. It's wrong. You got to change that. This is your worst project. That inner voice keeps telling us that over and over and over again. If we change that inner voice to a spectrum-based voice and say, like, instead of saying that this project is bad, we can look at the whole project, like 1 through 10. What's my favorite part of this project? Why am I doing this project? I still go out during cleanup week. My spouse hates it, absolutely hates it. And this is like the time where I enjoy some some traditional masculine things. The funny thing is I go out with a group of girls, and we go out and we collect broken lawnmowers and fix them and stuff. So that's kind of funny, because if we go back to the gender unicorn and think about gender expression, a lot of people in this area would never say that's a thing a group of girls would do, but we do. Anyway, when I go out to the world, I see every project that someone put out on the curve as their Z, but it's my A. It's my time to pick up that project and start looking at how I want to continue working with that. Some projects I only get like 10 minutes in and I'm like, okay, this has got to go to someone else. Its journey with me is over. And other times I take that project home and I keep it for 2 years, 3 years, because along with that project, even though the project might be complicated or difficult to do, comes a story. And those stories in themselves are also spectrum-based. Sometimes they're good, and they remind me why I like to go out and recycle and why I like to reduce how much stuff goes into the landfill. Sometimes they're bad and remind me why I don't pick up that particular item anymore or why I don't do cleanup week shopping in that neighborhood. As I reflect on my journey to the stage, there's a lot of times where I look back and I realize how far I've gone. Instead of looking at whether I'm right or wrong, I look back and ask myself, like, am I happy where I'm at? 1 through 10. Is this project's journey over with me, 1 through 10? Do I need to improve this certain aspect, 1 through 10? Am I sad right now, 1 through 10? And what I realize is I create a nuance. Sometimes I get projects done in like 3 minutes, and sometimes it takes 5 to 6 years. But one thing that has definitely changed about me that I can truly tell is I don't hate the way that I used to. I don't hate myself. I don't hate others the way I used to. I don't hate in the work that I do the way that I used to. Everything feels colorful when we turn it into a spectrum. Spectrums can be an extremely important part of who we are. We might judge people too harshly at times. I have a feeling right now we're judging 2020 too harshly. If we think about it, we can probably find a moment or two that we're grateful for in 2020. And if you take that moment, you might hate 2020 less. You might not want to because everyone hates 2020, and it's cool to hate 2020 right now. But 2020 is an important year. You can't disregard that. One time I gave all my students an A randomly. And when my supervisor asked me about that, I said, well, they survived 2020. People will ask them 10, 20, 30 years from now, what was 2020 like? And then when they recall that story, sometimes, probably the first year or two after, it's going to be on the really low end, right? But when they get older, they're probably going to wear that with a badge of honor, and it's probably going to be a part of their identity. And that can show how our spectrum can change in time. Sometimes we might fail in our A to Z journey, but remember that, one, you can always come back to that journey, to that project. However, it might be time to let that project become someone else's A to Z. Your spectrum might be a good thing to others. Others might perceive it as a bad thing. But ultimately, it's your thing. Thank you so much for learning about spectrums with me.